Hi, I'm Lia DeChico-Ramu. Welcome. This is Teacher Talk.
Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 3 of How to Talk to Teachers, Teacher Talk. How many times have we heard kids say, what do I need this for? And how am I going to use this in life when they refer to some of the subjects they learn in school? How many times did we say that when we were in school? It's a valid question. Curriculum, what teachers are mandated to teach by governments, is designed to prepare students for the real world beyond school. What we teach them should be relevant, engaging, and applicable so that they can do life successfully and joyfully. So there are so many important things kids need to learn, but what's more important right now than saving the world? Because pretty much that's the situation we're in. It's that serious. Independently for school, for example, kids take action by participating in initiatives like the Polar Interdisciplinary Coordinated Education Action, Polar ICE for short. That connects students with polar scientists, helping them to understand climate change through data-driven education, encouraging them to take action in their communities. There's something called Kids Saving the Earth that provide free environmental education materials to inspire children to protect the environment, and also something called Kids Against Plastic, founded by 2 young sisters, like young girls, involving children in tackling plastic pollution by organizing litter picking events and raising awareness about sustainable choices. So these, among many others, highlight how today's youth are really eager to engage in environmental advocacy, showing that they're not just passive observers, but active participants in the fight to protect our planet. So if kids are showing interest, and we all agree that it's a pretty important cause, do you think that teachers can be integrating saving the planet into their pedagogy or teaching practice? I do. And the way they can do this is by integrating the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, into their lessons. I call this out in my book, How to Talk to Teachers. Let's look at what the SDGs are. Now, this stuff is pretty meaty, and I'm not going to read the whole card. I'm just going to highlight some of the important stuff. Basically, these SDGs were developed by UNESCO in 2015. UNESCO is the United Nations, and it's as part of their 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. These social development goals are part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. They are a global call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity for all by 2030. UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, plays a key role in advancing several of these goals, particularly those related to education, science, culture, and communication. So there are 17 of them in total, and here they are. Poverty, hunger, health and well-being, quality education, gender, clean water. Please let's take note of the 7th one, affordable and clean energy, because it's going to be important for this episode. Decent work, industry. I said I wasn't going to read them all, but they're so important. I can't just scroll past them because all of them are really going to play a part in helping to save this planet. So UNESCO's main focus is on SDG 4, quality education, and that's why we do what we do. But again, we're going to be focusing on number 7. Today, to help us do that, I've invited a rock star, superstar teacher from New Brunswick, Canada, Mr. Ian Fogarty. Ian, who is an incredible teacher, as all of the teachers who I invite onto this webcast are, teaches chemistry and physics at Riverview High School on the east coast of Canada. He left research designing anti-cancer radiopharmaceuticals to innovate how we teach science. His collaborative classroom was the first in the world to have more than one smartboard, which was a little while ago. We've evolved a lot since smartboards, but he did do this work innovatively and as a leader, and that was duplicated 76 times globally. His students learned engineering by 3D printing and soldering lights for those living in light poverty. Remember, number 7. And he created a program called Current Generation. His transdisciplinary projects won a top 10 in the world for sustainability in education in LA, top 100 in the world for innovation in education in Helsinki, and he was Editor's Choice Award at the World Maker Faire in New York City. So he's been around. Ian's traveled a bit. This work has been published in over 9 books, and Ian himself has contributed to 4 books at a 3 master's level textbook in education and in art. Nationally, so right here in Canada, Ian won the Canadian Physics Award and was the highest scoring recipient to date for the Prime Minister's Award for Education. Internationally, he was the first Canadian to make the podium at the Microsoft Global Teacher event to win the NSTA STEM Educator and FETC STEM Awards in 2019. He was a top 50 finalist at the Global Teacher Prize. Ian, this is going to be the whole podcast, just talking about all the stuff that you've done. It's just incredible. Now, this is his formal bio. I think we can all agree that this is really, really impressive. But there's a project he hasn't included, and it's one where he served as co-producer, along with me, on a student-led film aligned to the SDGs. And we're going to talk a bit about that today and his whole approach to teaching the social development goals in the classroom. So I think we need to just take a moment and a breath to think about all that this man has done and applaud, celebrate, acknowledge, validate Ian for all his work. He's incredible. So let's give Mr. Fogarty a very warm welcome to Teacher Talk. Ian, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. That's a very generous bio. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and always a good time to work and talk with you.
Thank you, Ian. So let's jump right in. Based on what I read, there's just so much to unpack here. There's just your contribution to teaching and the profession and your leadership you show every single day is really something to celebrate. It's amazing. But I'd like to zoom in today, particularly on the current generation project that I just mentioned, and how you created a program that hits all the curricular outcomes that you're hired to achieve, right? You're a teacher and you've got to do your job, but also aligns to the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. Can you help us understand the mastery here? Because I know that there are teachers out there who want to teach the SDGs, they just don't know how, or that there are even resources available to do that. So tell us a bit about that program and how you teach it, please, and the thinking behind it.
Yeah. So current generation is a chance to solder and 3D print lights that are then sent around the world to a bunch of countries, to peers who are suffering in light poverty, so they have a hard time studying at nighttime because they don't have access to clean light. This is a good situation because I have to do electrical engineering kinds of things in my physics class, series circuits, parallel circuits, Ohm's law, those kinds of things. And so this gives us a chance to, instead of doing the typical lab that we would make fake lights turn on, we're doing the same lab, but we're making real lights turn on. And then there's a purpose behind it other than the knowledge by itself. And that's a game changer for students.
I think so. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you've taken the pieces of curriculum that you have to change, which you just mentioned, the bits of engineering you have to teach, and connected it to a real world problem, and connected the students to their peers, human to human, that made the learning meaningful and really, really impactful and effective for the kids. And it's kind of cool to create a light and turn it on and off in a lab. But when you zoom out, again, connected to humanity, connected to something concrete, and you're helping, I think that is really, really powerful for a student to have. That's a powerful experience. So thank you for doing that, because that's sort of out of the box thinking. And I would have maybe stayed in physics if I could do something like that. I tried. Well,
we find some students. Yeah, we find a lot of students who didn't think that they were going to like class, and the class is maybe more tolerable, but then they get their hands on this and they, oh, this is what it's really like. Okay, now this is interesting. And so it definitely changes who's interested and who continues on. So it's the connection to real people. I'm not making this light for a lab for a teacher. I'm making this light for somebody whose name I know, and they actually have names on them for who they're being made for. And so that life connection of here's a purpose. And I usually teach it in a way that I pretend it's not part of our curriculum. And so I don't get the black line masters nice photocopies out, because then they know it's the side program. So I pretend that it's off the cuff, and we do it day by day, and then it feels real to them, and it is real to them, and
it is real.
So yeah.
And it's applicable. So are those some of the lights back there? Can you show us what they look like and how they work, please?
So these ones are being troubleshot right now by a student who was just here a few minutes ago. And so these ones are not working because they're in line to get troubleshot.
For the learning.
Yeah, exactly. And so these were made by students a couple of years ago. These ones were made for friends of ours who have access to electricity at school. And so they can plug in to a computer at school, and then they take it home and do their reading and whatever it is at home with these. And so these are right, and so they'll have names on the back of them for who they're being made for. Right, so this one's Riley. Yeah.
So tell me about how many countries have you shipped this to, and how long has the current generation been going on?
This is our 10th year that we've been making lights, and we've sent lights to Guatemala and Honduras, the Dominican, South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Nepal, India, Uganda. There's a number of them. I'm sure I'm missing a couple in there.
That's incredible. And I understand that this program also has gone beyond your school and is now a board-wide initiative, right? So you've scaled.
Yeah, we're starting to scale. So yeah, and so we have some students who are coming. They're coming tomorrow after school from another school, and they're going to come and hang out here. And I'm going to have students from a variety of schools here working on these things. And we have some teachers who are starting to do that in their classrooms too. Yeah.
So let's be really clear. This program, this lesson, this learning is curriculum aligned. So you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but it's also integrating the UNESCO SDGs number 7, which is clean, affordable energy. So kids are learning what they're supposed to be learning, but they're also helping the world in meaningful, relevant, engaging, and applicable ways that are very, very connected, because Riley's going to be getting a light from a student in your class. So that's really, really getting deep into how impactful learning can be when it's done this way. And teachers can create lessons to integrate any one of the other 16 SDGs the same way you have. And there are resources out there to help them do that. And we'll put those in the show notes, so people will have access to those if there are teachers watching. But I'm curious, how did this start? Can you tell us how?
Yeah, so this is a good little story. Stars aligned, and so I was teaching the same content I was, and I remember 2 students asking the same question, Mr. Fogarty, why do I have to study this? And I gave not a great answer. It was an honest answer at the time. The answer was, because the binder that I inherited from the teacher before me, because the curriculum document that says, because the tests that I have before all have circuits happen in April. It's April, so we're doing circuits. And I was just trying to survive. But I did not like that answer later on. So fast forward a little bit, I got a chance to work with a couple of teachers in Colorado who had kind of thought about making some lights and had been making some lights. And one of my students, Lia, came back from a summer trip, and she had met 2 students from the Dominican, Haley and Maria. Haley and Maria work really hard. They want to be doctors, but by the time they go to school, come home, do their chores, it's dark. And so their choices are to burn kerosene if they have them, which is really not good for your lungs. They could burn some brush perhaps, but there's some environmental issues with that. And Haley's burnt her hair twice by leaning over candles. So this was a problem. And when I presented these problems to my students and said, here's the idea, here's the reason why we're going to study circuits, not because it's April, not because of the curriculum document said, but because there's a need out there. And I remember Lia being terribly upset that she had to leave these 2 students behind in the Dominican, not able to study, not able to work, not able to do the things they wanted to do. And so that became the motivation for doing the things that we do. And so I do all the same labs that we used to do. I just pretend that it wasn't organized. And we run them. And so we're still doing a series of circuits, parallel circuits, but now it's a different motivation. So now it's, well, if I don't learn this, then I get 9 out of 10 on a quiz. If I don't learn this, I get 8 out of 10 on a lab. Now, if they don't get it right, somebody's life is not as good as it could have been. And that changes the game.
It really does, Ian. It's such a, like you use the word motivation, and assessment is another episode coming soon. But the motivation to get 9 out of 10 is what drives our students. And the motivation should be, how can I help other? How can I save the planet? How can I be better? So this is a wonderful example of that. And I was so struck by this story. And let me give you a bit of backstory here, viewers. So I've known Ian, oh geez, Ian, should I tell him how long we've known each other? 14, 15 years. And for years, knowing that I was a filmmaker, at one point in my career, he was asking, can we make a movie? Can we make a film? And I'm like, I don't do that anymore. I'm a teacher. But we talked and he told me this story and I went, okay, there's something here. I was so struck by the beauty of the story about how his students have helped Haley and Maria that I wanted to work with Ian to make a little film. And we did. It's a short film. And the thing I think we're most proud of, aside from the work that was done, was that it's student-led. So all of the students that work on this film are university film students. So we've given them an opportunity to have a credit. We also had an intern from high school. It's called, believe it or not, Sending Light. And it's all about this journey, all about how this first iteration of current generation went through the program and what happened to them afterwards. So I made the film. It's on Vimeo. We're going to include the link. I made the film with Ian and our students from York University Film School here in Ontario, Canada. And you can view the film for yourself. It's not that long, but it's a beautiful story. And I think that people will enjoy it. But I would love you to tell us a bit more about the film and what our viewers can learn besides what happened with Haley and Maria. What else did the students learn? The crop of students that we interviewed. And tell us about the film, Ian, please.
Yeah, so I think the film addresses a question that some teachers who are trying to teach SDGs in their classroom have, right? So one of the questions is, great, we're helping students like Haley and Maria out, which is important, but also what about my own students that are right in front of me, right? I'm not mandated to help Haley and Maria. I'm mandated to coach and teach the students in front of me. And that's the most obvious connection. That's the changes that I've been making it. So even if Haley and Maria didn't exist, I'm still hitting different students that normally wouldn't necessarily be motivated. And it's for my own local students that we're doing this just as much as we are for the 1.3 billion people out there living in light poverty. Students find that there's different kinds of smart. There's find that I'm not very good at maybe taking tests or memorizing facts, but I do like to tinker, that I do like to problem solve, that have more resiliency than perhaps and grit perhaps than my peers do, because I'm willing to stick with a problem longer. That thinking with your hands is a really interesting, cool way of being smart that doesn't get a lot of attention in most schools. And so a different kind of student walks out of the room thinking that they're brilliant, that they're smart, that they're contributing, that they're making a difference, that their time matters, that their energy matters. So it makes a difference in my face-to-face students in that way. But it also, because we have a variety of different pieces to it, so there's the soldering, but there's also some 3D printing. And so kids who maybe would never have been interested in 3D printing or in engineering or soldering all of a sudden become that way. And they decide that, oh, this is something that I can do. And this is something that I can do that I'm good at. And this is something I can do that I'm good at and makes a difference. So there's a whole set of emotions that are attached to that, a motivation, the world needs me. And there's a mental health thing that's attached to that. The world needs my efforts. If they need them here in high school, then I can also use them out after high school. So it changes the kids that are here, because I'm also trying to get them to, because they're not done cooking yet, they're still baking, and they're still a little gooey inside. They need to have a lot of different experiences. So in addition to the engineering part, I also get them to go to other schools. So we'll go to a local middle school, we'll go to a local high school, we'll go to a conference, we'll go to NSTA or ISTE or some of these big teacher conferences, and they'll do presentations there as well. And through that, they learn that they're okay with the soldering part, but they're really good at public speaking, or they're really good at interacting with people, or they're really good at the graphic arts, or they're really good at silk screening. And so they have discovered that they are teachers, that they are commerce, political science people, that they're a whole variety of things in addition to engineering from their physics class. And that's really kind of fun.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what we see in the film. And without giving too much of it away, Ian had all this footage of the first iteration of Current Generation, including of Lia, who kickstarted this whole journey. So we see the kids from the footage of 14 years ago. It's about 14 years, right? Or 10 years ago. 14 years is when we met. So we see them as teenagers as they're going through this, and their journey as they're going, and we see them grow through this. But then we went back to New Brunswick with our crew from York University Film School, and we have footage of the kids as grown-ups today in their careers that they ended up in. And we talked to them about how the program changed them and how they ended up in the careers they ended up in. And I think that is the real power when we see this journey of self-exploration and self-discovery and what they learned going through this program, because it was so connected, relevant, engaging, and applicable, and how it changed their view of themselves, and how it impacted the direction that their careers took. So for a teacher, that's really powerful. And for a parent, that's also really, really wonderful to see. And that has been done by a very innovative, really smart, kind teacher called Mr. Ian Fogarty. So kudos to you, Ian, for all the kids that have gone through the program since the ones that we'll see in the film. Hopefully people will watch it and comment and let us know your thoughts. So many kids out there have gone through this program and have benefited from your pedagogy and the spirit that you brought to this. I'm in awe of it, to be quite honest with you. I want to ask you what you're most proud of. I know I'm proud of the film because the teachers, we got to be teachers and we got to teach kids how to do filmmaking and showcase this wonderful work. What are you most proud of this project?
What am I most proud of about the film?
Not necessarily the film, but the entire Current Generation project. There's such a scope there. What do you?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I'm most proud of is exactly that, the longitudinal study, the comments about if I didn't think I was going to like physics, I think I was going to do the psychology thing, I was going to do another thing, and I get to experience who I am and find out who I am. It might be physics, it might be engineering, but it might be other things too, by taking a physics class. And so, and then seeing that afterwards, seeing them 5 years out, 6 years out, and them coming full circle, and seeing them in different places now, right? Because they're now 5 years out of university, 6 years out of university now, and so they have careers and they're on their way. And then seeing that I had a small little contribution to that. It's the pivots, and in the video there's a nice little scene where they talk about pivot, and there's people that are turning their heads, which was completely impromptu, but those moments where their eyes light up and go, oh, I'm different today than I was earlier, and that's really cool. That's why I teach.
Exactly. That's why we teach. Teachers are after that. Yeah, that's what we're after. That's a gift to us to be able to contribute to that and share those moments. There's nothing like it. And when you have one of those moments with your child and you know that you've helped the trajectory of their lives, your work is done. Your work is done. And I love the pivot part. Again, without giving away too much of the film, I love when one of our interviewees says, when I was young, I knew I was going to be a princess. And that whole, I'm going to be a princess. What else is there? And then, a woman, I'm going to be a marketer. The typical, and that's not to say some women aren't marketers or aren't princesses, but her whole journey to becoming an engineer from her initial understanding of what she could do, and how Current Generation impacted her is something really lovely to watch. And Mr. Fogarty, you had a lot to do with that. So I'm hoping that you're also proud of yourself, proud of those moments, but also proud of yourself, and you can celebrate yourself for that work that you've done. Because I'm one of your biggest
thank
fans.
You. Well, and thank you. But I stand on the shoulders of giants. All the teachers ahead of me, the mentors that I had, my dad for one of them, but then also the grade 5 teacher, the soccer coach, the great parent who spent time after working hard all day. Like I get good kids, and there's a lot of people, and I get to be on the mountaintop here. So
it's very gracious, Ian.
Yeah,
very gracious of you. And I think the other thing we need to call out is that you're still in touch with these kids. 5, 6, 10 years after you've taught them, you're still in touch. I mean, that speaks volumes as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. In the background, there's a bunch of pictures of grads. A little update for that person you just talked about, the who wanted to be a princess. She just graduated with their engineering degree, and she just in the last couple of months took a job on advocating for girls in STEM at a local university.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
Right. So you got to watch the video to see why that's
important. Watch it. You got to watch it. It's so worth it. It's just so inspiring what these kids have done. It's just a wonderful story. I mean, it's our film, but I think it's relevant, and hopefully parents will understand more about the UNESCO Social Development Goals and how these kids were impacted in terms of what kind of careers they were able to pursue because of that program, and how integrating these goals can really support that for all kids. So on that, what do you think parents should know about today's students, and what motivates them? We talked about what motivates these kids. I mean, we touched on it, but getting 9 out of 10 on a quiz is motivating, but it's fleeting and it's not meaningful. But unfortunately, that's what we're after. We're still after, did you get a 90? It just makes me nuts.
Right.
What do you think the parents should know?
Yeah, so I have a number of parents who will say, do they have the grades or not? Do they have this or not? And the grades typically only measure one kind of smart, and the one kind of smart is it doesn't last for very long, because they're not going to be taking tests for a long time. They're not going to be passing lab reports for a long time. So the things that we're measuring oftentimes in traditionally in school aren't the things that we find valuable outside of school. We much prefer to hear people who want to think outside the box and blur the lines a little bit and be creative and are willing to, and that often shows up in the classroom as not necessarily interested in the quiz or the 9 out of 10. The kids, I think, are motivated. They want to matter. They want to matter. Their time is valuable. There's lots of things that are going on, and some people will sit and endure it because they don't see it as valuable, but they're going to be polite and they'll play the game of school, but they're not really hooked. Whereas if you can find something that is true, authentic, that's real, that matters, this is a real problem, a real situation, then all of a sudden there's reason for learning. Their time is valuable. They leave a contribution, and now they've left a contribution. There's a sense of pride. There's a sense of I'm important and I can contribute. And that has implications for their future path, but it has implications for their mental health, their sense of well-being, which we know is under siege right now. So yeah, the idea of doing something real. And that's, I find it challenging for some of my students at first when they start working on some of these projects is, no, I really want you to, I don't want you to build a business. I want you to run a business. I don't want you to do a thing. No, you're actually going to make a web page. I actually really want you to go down to the local market and do the thing. I actually want you to contact a prof and really, don't just write the letter that you would send. I want you to send the letter. And I want you to make the light that's actually going to be used by somebody real that really matters. And because of that, if one light doesn't work inside that, then that's not okay, because somebody's is depending on this. And that is frustrating to them because they just want to be done with it because, right, the bell's going to ring and the project is over, but it's not. And once they buy into that, then there's big dividends.
Ian, that's just such a wonderful example of active learning. And it's funny because I talk about all these things in the book. I don't know if you've read it, but I do mention you and your work in the book. So thank you for being gracious and allowing me to include you as that. But you talk about all the things: connection, contribution, and the mental health, having impact, mattering. All of these things are incredibly important. So sometimes if parents can let go of the anxiety around getting the 9 out of 10, is my kid going to get into the school? Is my kid going to have a job? All that stuff. and let them be and give them the space to learn, grow, figure out what matters and what's important to them, they're going to be okay.
Mhm.
Um, and you're
Yeah.
doing that in classrooms. So
Yeah.
thank you. So how do we get teachers to incorporate and teach the UNESCO Sustainable Development Goals the way you have? What would your suggestion be to teachers out there or parents who are wanting to have that conversation? How to talk to teachers and say,
Mhm.
hey, how are you making learning real and connected for my child? My child is interested in clean water. My child is interested in affordable energy. How is there a way that you can incorporate this into your lessons aligned to the UNESCO SDGs and maybe even quote some of the stuff you're doing? What would you suggest?
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, teachers are working hard. They have a document that they're held to, and you know, and for good reasons. This has been very carefully thought out and worked on for a long time. But how do you then merge those two things together? And um, I think most teachers are in it for. I don't know any teachers who are not in teaching because of the kids, and so it's a matter of finding out and knowing. So I love it when a parent comes and says, "My kid is really interested in some of the things that you just talked about, and is there a way that we can? I didn't know that about your student. Thank you. And is there a way that we can make this happen?" And the projects usually have some kind of transdisciplinary piece to it. So yes, you're in English, you're in history class, or you're in physics class, but there's a language piece to it. There's a communication piece to it. So then it becomes a matter of being friends and being able to have good conversations with my fellow English teacher, my fellow history teacher, on is there a way that we can have them do this thing and then count it towards this other thing over here, and so they can become a question, what outcomes can we reach? And generally the outcomes are coming more broad than they have been in the past. So there's more flexibility if they have a student face to work with. And so a lot of my time coming in on a Saturday or coming in on a Friday night has been because of a certain student. I tell my wife all the time, I got to go to school because one student, two students are waiting for this thing tomorrow morning. And that's what really motivates teachers is individual kids, individual stories. So if a parent can walk in and say, my kid is really interested in skateboarding, how can we make this happen? What can I do? Then that's a good chance to go forward. Yeah.
That's a great example of how we can support partnership between teachers and parents and that exchange of information that again will make learning really, really meaningful for an individual student. That's really cool, Ian. Again, I wish you were my teacher. I might have been an engineer. Who knows? Well, thank you, Ian. I know it's always going to be an incredible conversation when I connect with you. We continue to find ways to collaborate, and it's always an honor for me to work alongside you. We're working on stuff now. It's going to be another big reveal when we get it all lined up. But I just have such respect for you and what you do, and the fact that you will go in on a Friday night for a Saturday morning to make sure a student has what they need. That you think outside the box, like you said, that you create these programs and that you're continually doing the very best job you can do for the best for every student. It's admirable. It's incredible. It's amazing. You are such an incredible, I keep using the word incredible over and over again, um, asset to the profession, such a leader across Canada. And thank you. Thank you for letting me learn, grow, and soar alongside you.
Well, thank you for encouraging me to do some things too. I remember our first couple of visits way back a long time ago, how inspiring you were to try and help me go along. But really, it's it comes from. I mean, the last thing is for me is a quote from my dad, who's a master teacher, was teach kids, then teach curriculum, right? Teach the kids first, then teach the curriculum. If you can do both, then great. And that's made all the difference for me. Yeah.
Wise words. Well, your dad would be proud. Well, we can leave it at that. I'm going to encourage everybody to click on the link and watch our film. It's called Sending Light. Applaud alongside us for all the work that Ian has done for his students in New Brunswick and for students all over the world, where he sent light to support UNESCO SDG number 7, affordable and clean energy for all. Be well, be safe, and continue to light up the world.